Hello, welcome to
Hello.
Rappler Talk. I'm Marites Vitug, and joining us from Singapore is Mr. Lye Liang Fook, a senior fellow, and he's the coordinator of the Regional Strategic and Political Studies Program, as well as the Vietnam Studies Program at ICES, or the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Yusof Ishak Institute. We're very privileged to have you, Mr. Lai, on this interview. We know you have been closely watching China, so we will ask your views on the geopolitics now that's happening in the region.
Okay.
Welcome to Rappler Talk.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Lai, how would you describe China's behavior during the pandemic? There's been a lot of talk about its aggression, as we've seen in India with the border conflict, Hong Kong with the national security law, Australia, with what's happening now after Australia proposed a probe on the origins of the virus in China, and also, of course, in the South China Sea. So, what's happening? How would you describe China's behavior?
Well, I suppose looking at China's behavior from outside China, I would describe it as one of a mixed type of behavior in the sense that in the initial phase of China's tackling of the COVID-19, there had been episodes of a bit of clampdown. There were clampdowns on whistleblowers. There were also action taken against specific individuals, asking them not to spread rumors, and what they are doing is a threat to the domestic security situation within the country. And of course, in a way that China did not immediately come out publicly when this COVID-19 first happened in Wuhan. So in that sense, there were mistakes made in the initial phases. Later on, I think there were also, when China managed to get a grip of the COVID-19 situation within the country, it began also, it seems from my vantage point, to be more robust in trying to defend its handling of the COVID-19 situation from what is perceived as pressures coming from other countries outside China, criticizing its actions. So in that sense, yes, its behavior is a rather mixed one. And of course, as you have rightfully pointed out, it continued with its activities in the South China Sea, conducting oil and gas exploratory activities even in the EEZ of the other ASEAN claimant states. Continuing a practice which I think had started not too long ago. It did not just happen during COVID, but it had happened not too long ago last year, also in the EEZ of the ASEAN claimant states. So in that sense, certainly, yes, you can say that these actions do not conform to what we understand as the behavior that is expected of a country that ought to abide by international norms and behavior. Yeah.
And in the South China Sea, recently there have been pronouncements by the US, by Australia, actually strong statements against China when it comes to their claims in the South China Sea. Are you seeing what Pompeo calls a new alliance of democracies forming in this part of the world on the South China Sea issue?
Yes, I think to some extent the U.S. has shifted its position. In the past, the U.S. says that we do not take a stand with regards to the merits of the claim of the claimant states in the South China Sea. But Pompeo's recent statement does indeed show that the United States has now come out clearly to criticize China's expensive claims in the South China Sea. And it also, in a way, explicitly endorses the claims of the other ASEAN claimant states, based on which the United States did allude to, which is based on international rules and norms, the claims of the other ASEAN claimant states. So in this way, what the United States has done is that it has shifted its position to come out more strongly in favor of the ASEAN claimant states. Now, of course, Australia has also done so. And I suppose, in a way, this is quietly welcomed by the ASEAN claimant states, right? Because since 2016, when the Arbitral Tribunal gave its award, the response from the non-ASEAN claimant states has, apart from China, has been rather muted. So this move, latest move, does lend a strong level of support to international rules and norms. And of course, I believe that quietly the ASEAN claimant states support this. But again, whether they come out publicly to say that they are in support of what the Pompeo has said, I think that may not happen, because I think they have to calculate their interests, because they are located in this part of the world. They straddle the big giants. So they are more cautious, as I see so far, in terms of their public statements on this issue. But quietly, I have the feeling that they welcome what the US and Australia has done. Yeah.
And what does this mean for China? Do you think it will push them to be more aggressive in South China Sea?
I think China still has some options, a few options on the table, which does not raise too much the tension, but they can continue to uphold their claims, as can be seen by recent reports when they set up surveillance platforms on the waters in the South China Sea. These surveillance platforms are visible, are placed, they float along the surface of the water. So these are some of the activities that they can continue to do. They can continue to conduct exercises in the area, fly past, beef up their surveillance mechanisms in the areas. And then there was recent reports about them using their jamming capabilities to intercept the telecommunications equipment of Chinese fighters that traverse the area. So these are some of the activities that I suspect they will continue to do, or it may even be stepped up to continue to assert their claims that they claim in this part of the South China Sea.
So China seems to be making more enemies than friends. Let's just look at, for example, India. When China flared up the border conflict, why did China have to do this at this time? Why the timing, and when everyone is trying to focus on the pandemic?
Sure. There are a number of possible reasons. One of which is that China wants to distract its citizens from the current difficulties, especially with regards to the economy that has been battered by the COVID-19, and therefore playing up an external threat will help to distract the population from these domestic challenges, pressing domestic challenges back home. But of course, there are other views which come out to say that China does not want to appear weak in the face of external criticisms or pressures that has come from particularly the United States and other Western countries. You will recall that during the height of the pandemic, China also extended aid to a lot of countries, right, including Europe. And then one of the episodes that came out was there were questions raised over the quality of China-made masks, as well as test kits. And then there was also a newspaper, China Daily, a government newspaper, that was reported to have censored an article written by 27 EU ambassadors. In particular, they took out a reference that established a link of COVID-19 to China. So that sentence was, I think, removed. And such episodes certainly does not do China's image justice overseas. In fact, it dented China's image. So in a way, China, according to this view, China feels that it is being cornered by various other countries around the world, and therefore to appear weak will be very difficult and in fact politically costly for the domestic leadership. So the only way that it could defend itself is to fight back. So you see that instead of accepting the criticisms, there were instances of wolf warrior diplomacy where several of its senior diplomats and officials do come out strongly, and some even went to the extent of criticizing the failure of Western countries to tackle their own COVID situation in their own country, and putting up the Chinese example as a model that other countries can learn from, something like that. So along these lines, you can see that there was a pushback from China. But a third possible reason is that China wants to show that it is a big power, that while tackling the COVID-19 situation within its own country and extending aid to other countries that are fighting COVID, it is able to also protect its interests on multiple fronts, all at one go. And therefore, you see, it is continuing to conduct oil and gas exploratory activities in the EEZ of other countries. As you mentioned, maybe even the clash with India over the border is a manifestation of this. So in other words, it is a message of strength that China wants to portray here, that I'm not saddled by the COVID-19. In fact, I am able to handle COVID-19 while at the same time protect my interests regionally, if not internationally. So there are a number of possible reasons that could explain why the moves that China has taken, as you have mentioned.
So it's very interesting. So do you think the national security law, the foisting of the national security law in Hong Kong is part of this? Or is it a show of strength as well?
The national security law, I think, is a combination of the above reasons. For example, to China's credit, the national security law has been needed for many years already. According to Article 23 of the Basic Law, this national security legislation needs to be passed, right? But as you can see, since 1997 handover, it has been 23 years already. The Hong Kong Legislative LegCo has not been able to debate and pass this legislation. There was an early attempt to pass it in 2003. You recall 2003, there was some debate about a national security legislation. But what the result was that 500,000 people of Hong Kong went out to the streets to protest. So there was an earlier attempt, and this did not succeed. And then fast forward to last year, as you can see, they tried to do something about anti-extradition law, which again the outcome was that people spilled over to the streets, right, to protest, and now last year it degraded into not only peaceful protests but also protests that resulted in vandalism and disruption to the socio-economic life of Hong Kong. So in that sense, if you look at it from this long-term point of view, from Beijing's perspective, they realize that we cannot rely on the Hong Kong LegCo to pass this national security law. And that is why they have taken matters into their own hands this year to do, in a way, a top-down approach, to pass it at the Beijing level, the National People's Congress level, and then try to apply it, which they are doing now in Hong Kong. So in that sense, if you look at it this way, then what it's doing is in a way quite reasonable. But of course, if you look at it more in recent times, right? In recent times, after the national security law has been implemented, it started to round up the pro-democracy activists, and of course, recently the Jimmy Lai, who heads the Apple Daily News network. So these are attempts to try to take action from Beijing's point of view against what it regards as troublemakers, right? But from the societal's point of view or external point of view, it is action that is against freedom of speech, human rights in Hong Kong. So in a way, I think certainly both sides have merits to their case, but we will have to see how this thing develops further. Already, the United States has announced sanctions against 11 individuals, including the Chief Executive Carrie Lam of Hong Kong, plus 10 other of senior officials, 10 other senior officials that deal with Hong Kong matters. And of course, Beijing, in order not to appear soft, has also announced measures to take action against 11 individuals from the United States. Right? So you can see Beijing's response, in a way, is calibrated to what the US has taken. It does not want to overdo it, but it does not also want to appear weak, because appearing weak will be politically disastrous for the leadership of China. So its actions so far, it seems, on this matter, it has been calibrated in order not to overplay, not to allow these anti-China sentiments in the US to be even stronger. Because if the moment you overplay your hand, then the anti-China sentiments will write on it and say, hey, here you see is a China that is overreacting, and therefore we must take even firmer action against China. So it is a combination of factors. So a lot of variables are at play. It's not just one factor alone. So we'll have to see how this Hong Kong issue plays out.
How will this affect Taiwan? I just saw in the South China Morning Post this morning that Taiwan has already been militarily preparing for any eventuality. What does this mean? Is Taiwan so nervous about what's happening to Hong Kong?
I think it is bigger than that. It is, as you can see now, the U.S. cabinet level health minister Alex Azar has visited Taiwan and has called on Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen. This is the first cabinet level official to visit Taiwan since 2014. I think in 2014 there was another cabinet level U.S. official from the Environment Protection Agency that visited Taiwan. So in a way, it is a continuation of the Chinese side say it is an escalation. Escalation maybe in a way that now the context between US-China is different, right? It's more tense, there's more confrontation, much more competition. But if you look at the level of the cabinet status level official that has been sent, it is quite similar to what was sent in 2014. And the subject matter at hand is how the US has positioned it is that it is a matter of the US trying to lend support to Taiwan's efforts, successful efforts to fight COVID, right? In 2014, it was on the cabinet level official was from the environment. Again, you see environment, healthcare matters currently. So these are topics that are not in a way so sensitive, so to speak. But it is sensitive from Beijing's point of view because of the context of the escalated tensions in US-China relations. So Beijing has reacted. You can see that they have sent their J-10 and J-11 fighters to cross the median line in the Taiwan Straits. And of course, there has been a war of words from the foreign ministry and the US side on this matter. For Beijing, it is for them, they regard Taiwan as their own internal matter, and therefore they are prepared to. They seem prepared and are prepared to take further action. What they say, we have the right to take further action in order to respond to our national interest. How this Taiwan issue will go, we will have to wait and see. As of now, in a way, a critical red line has not been crossed, in the sense that the United States has not yet sent a senior cabinet level official that deals with security or national security. Right? If this were to happen, then it is a different ball game altogether. But let's not overjump our conclusions here. Let's wait and see. It appears that every move that the US take on Taiwan, the Chinese will have to respond. If no response is given, then the Chinese side will look weak. We will have to see how. In a way, this is also the dynamics arising from the coming US presidential elections. Let's see.
And do you consider this as what commentators are saying, a second Cold War? Are we in a second Cold War?
During the Cold War, after the Second World War, that lasted until 1991, there was a complete bifurcation between the West camp and the capitalist camp and the communist camp. Right? There was minimal, or if not virtually, no dealings between these two camps. So in a way, it is different now. It is not a Cold War in that sense, because there's a lot of interdependence and interlinkages between China and the US in particular. You just look at the volume of foreign reserves that China holds in US denominated currency. It is still a very significant sum. There is also very strong trade flows between China and the US. And as we speak now, Chinese students continue to be able to study in the US, even though there were recent talks about the US further clamping down on Chinese students who do not have physical lessons on campus. Right? If those who take online lessons, they may not have their visas renewed, something like student visas renewed. But this matter has, I think, been resolved. So you can see that there are a lot of linkages and interdependence between the two countries. And also during the Cold War, the military confrontation was between the East and the West. And there were missiles, a lot of missiles directed at each other. But we don't see this nature of military confrontation as of now, right? So in that sense, I wouldn't say that we are in a state of Cold War. There are certainly worrying signs. There also appears to be a penchant for tit-for-tat actions. But I think we will have to, even on the part of the US administration, although we argue that and there appears and there is strong bipartisan support against tough action against China, it may not necessarily be the case that they agree on what approach is the best. Although they agree that yes, we should take tough action, and even for US President Trump, to me, he seems to be more of a president who is out there to strike the best deal, right? So an individual that's out there to strike the best deal will therefore seize the moment if he sees that a deal is in the making. So in that sense, he is ready to strike a deal, right? Even though now it does not appear that a deal is close, right? So in that sense, it is different from the situation in Cold War, where it is just confrontation all the way between the East and the West camp, right? So in that sense, we should not over classify the current confrontation as a Cold War.
Yes. One final question is, because China has been as you said, had mixed behavior for different reasons, and it's making a number of enemies. And I think India, was it India who said that it's time to rethink the One China policy? Is this a viable option?
I think it will have to depend on individual countries, how they calculate and how they want to abide or adjust their One China policy. But even for the United States, you see, the US says that we have our own One China policy, right? And this One China policy, from the perspective of the United States, is in a way allow them room to play also, as you can see from the latest visit by the US Health Secretary to Taiwan, right? And this visit, the subject matter of the visit is not in a way sensitive because it deals with health issues. It is couched in the form of a health issue. The US Health Secretary is there to congratulate the Taiwan president on how she had handled the COVID-19 situation in Taiwan well. So just on the subject matter alone, it's not sensitive, but if it also falls within what the US regards as its One China policy, right? But from the Beijing's point of view, what the US has done is against the One China policy from Beijing's point of view, because the position of Beijing is that for any country that has diplomatic ties with Beijing, we are opposed to any official contacts of that particular country with Taiwan. So it actually depends on your vantage point and how each country interprets its One China policy. The US, this is not a contravention of the US One China policy, right? But Beijing says no, this is unacceptable, and I don't see any closing of gap here. They will just have to continue to disagree, right? And take action or counter action to show their displeasure, so to speak. Yeah.
So here, maybe just one final question. I was going to ask you from an outsider's point of view about my country, Philippines, and its pivot to China. What is your perception from the outside? What is the impact of President Duterte's pivot to China on ASEAN and on the South China Sea issue as well?
Yes, if you look at it, compare it to the previous administration of Aquino administration. The Aquino administration has been, in terms of its policy towards China, has been characterized as one of very of confrontation, in a way, of heightened competition with China. And the most signature part of it was, of course, the case that the Philippines brought against China in 2013 at the arbitral tribunal. And of course, the award was issued in 2016, and which largely was in the favor of the Philippines. And then thereafter, you have President Duterte coming into office, and he virtually ignored the arbitral tribunal ruling, right? And in a way, there was a missed opportunity there for the Philippines. The perception out here is that President Duterte has veered more closely towards China. An example of it is Bill strategy to develop the Philippines, which he has said that it in a way dovetails well with China's Belt and Road Initiative. And on the part of China, it has also highlighted that there are a couple of projects in the Philippines that fall within the China's BRI, and therefore also fits snugly into President Duterte's Bill program. In a way, what they're saying is that there's a lot of complementarity between Bill and BRI, right? But having said that, the beauty of democracy in the Philippines is that there are a lot of checks and balances, right? You can see that one aspect is that the Philippines defense and security apparatus, they have very close ties with the US, their US counterparts. So that is already one check and balance, right? And then you have a lot of interest groups within the Philippines that outwardly show their displeasure of this pro-China approach. In a way, it is very effective because it serves as a very timely reminder that, hey, it is not just, certainly the president has powers within his means to do things, but he cannot do things at the total disregard of this other civil society or even the interests of his bureaucracy, right? These interests have been built up over the years. They in a way act as a form of stabilizer in terms of Philippines' foreign policy orientation. And as you can see, even in February this year, when it was announced that the Philippines would abrogate the Visiting Forces Agreement, it has now been suspended, right? And then I read the the TPN note that was sent to the US side. It says, oh, we will suspend this in light of current developments. So I suspect current developments would include current developments in the South China Sea. So in that sense, this is a manifestation of how other interests within the Philippines has been able to serve as a very healthy stabilizer. And it is a hallmark of the beauty of democracy in the Philippines. So in that sense, I will congratulate the Philippines for this, you know what I mean? So in that sense, there's sufficient checks and balances in place. And people are saying that maybe the next president will have to move back to the center, you know, there's speculation, next president will have to move. It's like a pendulum, you know. So in that sense, we should be confident on how, as we go forward on this year.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lye. You know, thank you for reminding us that we have still some democracy in the Philippines. It was very, very informative. And to our viewers and listeners, we will continue to talk about regional issues and geopolitical issues. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye.
Thank you for this chance.